All right, everybody, welcome. This is Getting Baked. I'm your Uncle Josh. Today we're making pizza. We're gonna do a same-day pizza. We're gonna make the dough first. Then we're gonna make some sauce. The dough on this takes approximately, 6 to 7, maybe possibly 8 hours, depending on the temperature in your home, things of that nature. But we're all set to go, so we're just gonna jump right on in here. First, we're going to start by making our dough. We're going to measure out, again, our salt and our yeast and our water first. We're going to mix that together as we did in the last bread recipe. And then we're going to measure out our flour and combine everything together. And we've got our 12-quart tub, we've got our small scale, we've got our larger scale. So we'll just get going. We need 10 grams of salt for this recipe. Got my empty cup here. I'll put that on the bigger scale. .29, 9.95, 10.17. We're going to call that good enough. Add our salt right into there. That's zeroed out. For this recipe, we only use 1 gram of instant dry yeast. So we're going to measure that out here next. And I knew that was getting low, so I need to cut open another package. Excuse me one moment. All right, this first packet got us to 0.22. Again, we're looking for 1 gram. And we got 1.03 grams of instant dry yeast. We're going to add that to our jar. For the time being, we are done with the little scale. We'll close it up and put it away. Now we'll turn on our big scale. Now this recipe calls for 65% hydration. And we're going to be using 500 grams of flour. So we need 325 grams of water. And we need that water to be somewhere in the neighborhood, in my house, between 85 and 90 degrees. If your house is a little bit cooler, say around 70 degrees, you're going to want that water maybe around 90 to 95 degrees. So I've already got some water here, and I have already warmed it up. Let's see what we've got here. And this is settling right at 86.7 degrees, which again, for my house, we keep it about 74 degrees in here. That is going to be just fine. So I'll cap my thermometer, set it aside. That's some garbage. Set that there. All right, now I'm looking for 325 grams of this water. 1, 2, 3, 315. 325 grams of water. All right, so we'll get rid of this, set it aside, get rid of this. I'll get a tiny little spoon, and give this a nice little mix. And then we're just gonna let it sit aside while we measure out 500 grams of flour. Okay, I'm using a slightly larger Pambro tub today, and the reason for that is that this dough requires a fold or two during the fermentation process, and in order to be able to stretch the dough and fold it on itself, the smaller 6-quart tub doesn't really give you enough room to do that. So we're using the 12-quart tub today so that we can make sure we get a good fold in when it's time to do so. Okay, so I've got my bucket here zeroed out. We're looking for 500 grams of flour. I am using a 00 imported flour from Italy that is designed specifically for like a Neapolitan style pizza. It's called 00 flour. The brand I'm using is Caputo, and I'm using Caputo Blue Pizzeria flour. If you don't want to go through all of that trouble to find fancy and honestly slightly expensive flours, you could use any high quality all-purpose flour for this. You could use a bread flour, however, the bread flour is going to come out with quite a bit different texture. We're looking for, the 00 is basically a really finely milled flour. It's really soft. So that's why the all-purpose is kind of the next best bet. All right, we're getting close to 500 grams here. 495, 498. $501. We're going to call that good enough. All right, so we'll set our flour aside. Give a stir here. Get our tub. We're done with our scale for the time being. Move that out of our way. All right, and all that's left here is going to be to combine all of this. We're just going to dump the water, salt, yeast mixture right in here. We're going to use our hand like a little bit of a paddle. We'll end up using our peaky to scrape down the sides. And then we'll kind of fold it on top of each other a little bit, pinch it together a bit. And we're just looking to get it good and mixed, evenly hydrated, etc., etc. It's going to get sticky, so we've got a dough scraper so we can remove a lot of the dough from my hand. So we'll get that going. And after that, we'll come back real quickly. We might go straight through, but then we're going to make our sauce. So, get these glasses out of my face. One more quick little stir. And bam. Now, I mentioned before that this recipe is 65% hydration. If you're brand new to this, you may want to move that number down closer to 60%. If that was the case with this recipe, we would have used 300 grams of water rather than 325. The reason for that is that the wetter the dough is, the stickier the dough is. And the stickier the dough is, especially for someone who hasn't stretched out a pizza crust before, for example, or launched a pizza into the oven off the end of a pizza peel, the stickier the dough is, the harder it is to work with. So if you've never done it before, you could maybe lower this down to about a 60% hydration. Again, that'd be about 300 grams of water rather than the 325 I used. So this is really shaggy. You can kind of see it's just kind of crumbling apart. And that's just because the dry flour, it takes a while to get it to work in when you're using less water. Most of the breads that I make have hydration levels anywhere from 73%, possibly up to 80% for some of the whole wheat type loaves and such. So that's a lot more water than what we're using here. So that's why it's just a little bit harder to get everything to work in. But the other nice part about that, though, is that it all, once it's worked in, it tends to stay together easier. It tends to stay in one piece a little bit more than some of the bread doughs we make. So I've still got some flour in the bottom of the tub, so now I'll just kind of pick this big clunk of dough up and press it into the flour there. Pick it all up, get it all integrated. There's another option here if you wanted to. You can always have a little bowl, of warm water on the side here. And you can dip your hand in there while you're doing this, and that kind of helps to keep the dough from sticking to your fingers quite so badly. But at the same time, you're constantly adding a little bit more water into the dough, and you're adding to the hydration level. So again, if you're kind of new and if you don't want to work with a really sticky dough, that may not be the best way to go. So this is fairly well mixed now. I'm going to use my scraper and I'm going to get this off with my fingers the best I can. The glasses keep falling down in my face. That's okay. And get a little bit more off my thumb here. I'll pinch all that off. Okay. So this is what we've got. It's sticky enough. I can probably pick this up and just kind of show you what this looks like in here. Get some of these pieces off the side walls down into the dough ball. So you can just kind of see it. It's just kind of a shaggy, one piece, sticky lump of dough. So that's what we've got for that. What is my next step here? We're going to set this aside. We're going to cover it, and then we can make some pizza sauce. Yeah, so I think I am actually going to stop this video. I'm going to wash this hand. I'm going to cover this up with not saran wrap, cling wrap, the press and seal wrap. Okay, and we're just going to get a nice tight seal around here to keep any moisture that's in here while it ferments. Then I'm going to come back, I think, in about 30 to 60 minutes. This is going to start to grow and it's going to start to spread out a little bit. Once it's kind of spread out, nearly maybe not quite, but nearly the circumference of this tub, that's when it's going to be ready to be folded. So what I think I'll do, I'm going to end this video in about 30 to 60 minutes. When this looks about ready to be folded, I'm going to come back. We're going to show you guys how to fold the dough, and then we're going to make our sauce in that video. And then we'll be back later on this evening to make our dough balls, and finally to bake up a really nice looking pizza. So we'll see you guys in a little bit. Thanks for looking. All right, I'm back. And we are going to do two things in this video. We are going to apply our first fold of this dough, and we're going to make our pizza sauce at the same time. So first, let's open up our tub here. Let's get this out of the way. And this really hasn't grown or stretched out quite as much as I would have thought by now. It's been close to an hour. But we're going to go ahead and give it one fold, but because it hasn't really developed too much, we're probably going to come back in about another half hour and give it a second fold. But this time I do have a little bowl here with just some warm water in it. I'm just going to wet my hand, shake off some excess. We're not trying to add too much water in. We just don't want it to be too sticky and stick to our fingers too much. So we're just going to grab a corner, pick it up, and pull it over the dough. And we're going to do that about 3 or 4 times around the whole thing here. Pick it up, stretch it, and pull it over. The purpose of folding is to develop the glutens. Glutens are what give dough their stretch, but then that's what gives the final product, whether it's pizza dough, whether it's bread. That's what ultimately makes the air bubbles, the air pockets, because the glutens basically hold the flour together, and as the gases get created, they get trapped inside there. So, all right, so this is just kind of roughly, triangular in shape now. You can see it's a little bit taller than it was. But after feeling this, it's not ready to be left alone just yet. So we're gonna let this sit for probably about another 30 minutes, and then we'll come back to that. So we're gonna seal this back up, and we'll come back to this in about a half an hour. We'll give it one more fold, and at that time we're going to coat the outer layer of the dough in the bottom of our tub here with just a tiny bit of olive oil to prevent the dough from basically getting stuck in there. Because when we remove it, we don't want to stretch or tear it at all. Again, the whole point of this fold replaces kneading, which many people do. It's to produce the glutens. And as soon as you pull that out and stretch it and tear it and all that sort of thing, you've destroyed those glutens. So you're kind of getting in your own way in that sense. So I'm going to set this stuff aside. I'm going to trust that's out of frame enough. And we're just going to get started right away on our pizza sauce. And this, much like the dough, is a pretty simple version of my sauce. I do have a sauce where I use canned San Marzano tomatoes from Italy, but today we're just going to use tomato sauce, some olive oil, some spices. That's really all we're going to do today for our sauce. My tomato sauce, I get this, it's called Pomi. It's an Italian tomato sauce. It has one ingredient in it, it is tomatoes. So that's why I get it. You can use whatever kind of tomato sauce you'd like, but make sure it only has tomatoes in it. A lot of them you'll find have salt, a lot of them will have even sugar. Many of them will have basil added, things like that. So you're just looking for tomatoes. If that's too hard to find, you could use one that has nothing but salt added, but we're going to add salt to this. You just have to adjust your salt down in your final recipe there. So, all right, so that's actually a 17-ounce carton there of tomato sauce. Most cans are about 15.5 ounces. That's going to work just fine too. So we've got our tomato sauce there. Next, we're going to add about 1 ounce of olive oil. We're just going to eyeball this. For those of you who don't like my metric system and my grams, you'll be happy to know that we're not doing that for our sauce. All right, after olive oil, we're going to take half a teaspoon of salt. And we're just going to use a measuring spoon for this. Again, as there's no real chemistry involved here when you're baking. Ratios are important to maintain a consistent product, right? That's why we measure everything down to the gram. With this, it's, much more forgiving because there's no real chemical reaction going on between any of these things. That being said, I do generally kind of like to make this sauce a little bit before we make pizza. You could make this sauce and start making pizzas with it immediately, but I find that if it sits all together once you mix it for at least several hours, maybe even overnight, the flavors just kind of tend to meld a little bit more. So we'll go on. That was my 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now I'm going to take 1 1/4 teaspoons of oregano. So this is my 1 teaspoon measuring spoon. I'm just going to maybe give it a rounded teaspoon here, and we'll call that roughly 1 1/4 teaspoons of oregano. Good enough. Again, this is all kind of more to taste, especially with your salt. You might want to add half the salt up front. Taste it once you're done mixing everything else in. You can always add a little bit more, but you cannot take it out once you've added it. So we're looking for a teaspoon of garlic powder next. Put that over here. This sauce is kind of somewhere between like a spicy, savory New York kind of style. Well, at least what they call New York style here in Nebraska. And like a true, basically just tomato and salt Neapolitan type sauce. This one's kind of right in the middle. I don't add too much spice or anything like that. Just enough to give it a little kick. So that was my garlic powder. Now I want a 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder. All right, all that good enough there. Last 2 ingredients are just a pinch of black pepper and a pinch of red pepper flakes. Got a pepper grinder here. Call that a good little pinch. I've got some red pepper flakes here. We'll call that a good little pinch. And that's all we got. We're going to mix this all together. hardest part is generally getting that oil to not float on top and get it worked in with all the other ingredients. And another reason I kind of like to mix this up ahead of time is using dried spices. This kind of gives them a little bit of a chance to quite literally just soften up, especially those red pepper flakes. So that is it for our pizza sauce. We're going to cover this. We're going to put it in the refrigerator. And we're going to come back in about 30 minutes. Yeah, 30 to 35 minutes. At which point we're going to give our dough one last fold. We're going to coat it with a little bit of olive oil to lessen its stickiness. Then it's just going to proof for a while. We're going to be back about, it's 2:30 now, probably be somewhere around 7:30 this evening to actually make our dough balls. Maybe a little earlier than that. And then somewhere probably in the neighborhood of 8:30 we'll start baking pizzas. So we look forward to it. Thanks for looking, guys. Be right back. All right, back again. We're going to apply our second fold to our pizza dough. Then we're going to put a little light coating of olive oil around it to keep it from getting too stuck to the bottom of the tub. And then we're going to be done for a few hours. We'll come back and continue on. So again, the fold, we're going to put a little bit of warm water on our hands, shake it off a bit. Grab one section of the dough, pick it up, stretch it and pull it over. Same thing over here. Now let me grab this piece from underneath where the other two are folded. Bring it over the top. And we're going to kind of turn it over and set it down on the side with the seams, for lack of a better word, from the fold. I need to start remembering to take these glasses off before I film. In fact, there we go. Okay, so our last step here is we just want to kind of tuck it under itself, kind of make it into a bit of like a ball shape, as round as we can be anyway. Grab our olive oil. Just going to put a splash on the top of our dough ball. Very good. Smear that around. Smear it around. We're not really trying to mix this in to the dough, mind you. This is meant to just to coat the outside. And again, the only real reason for it is so this doesn't stick to the bottom of our tub when it's time to remove it. So another little splash there on the bottom. Smear that all around as well. Some of that oil. Okay, I'm gonna pick it up one more time, put it back the way it was with the seams down. All right, and that's all we've got. So that's our second fold. We've coated it in oil. I'm going to wash my hand first, then we're going to put the seal back on. We're going to let it rest. It is shortly after 3. We started around 1:15 or so this afternoon. So somewhere between 6:15 and 7:15 this evening. So maybe, 3 and 4 hours from now will be time to come back. We'll get the dough out of the tub. We'll make it into 4 dough balls. Each one of those is going to make roughly a 12-inch pizza. And we will continue on from there. So thanks for watching. We'll be back in a little bit. All right, we are back. Done with this. And it is time to make our dough balls. We're going to make 4 dough balls. They're going to be a little bit over 200 grams a piece, which is going to be enough for about 4 12-inch pizzas, roughly. So let's get started. Don't need that. First thing we want to do, we want to flour up our work surface. And we can be generous. We're also going to want to flour up our hands because we're going to be working with the dough. So we'll call this good for now. The second step, we're going to use flour again. We're going to flour around the outside of our Cambro container here. And then we're going to work the dough out from the sides first. We're going to flour the top of it in this, then we're going to kind of drop it into one hand and let it fall out here onto the counter. So flour the top, sprinkle around the edges here, a bit more on the top, pat that in. All right, now start pulling this away from the edges. This comes out pretty easy with the olive oil. We've got a few pretty large bubbles in here, so I'm fairly confident it's done. We're just going to drop that into that hand, and we're going to drop it down on the counter. I'm going to flour this side really well. Both hands again really well. The next thing we want to do is we just want to kind of get this into something of a circle or square, something where we're going to be able to divide it fairly evenly just by looking at it. So I've got a rough square shape here going on, and we're not going to worry about weighing these as we cut them, but we're just going to cut straight through and straight through again. And we've got the beginnings of our 4 dough balls. Looks like these two might be a tiny bit larger than these other two, but we're not going to worry about that too much. Slide these out of the way. Get a cleaner work surface to work with. We're going to do the same thing we do with a loaf of bread. We're just going to fold this over itself several times. And we're going to flop it on this other side. And we're going to pull it into a loose ball. Set that one aside. I'm going to finish up with these others. All right, 2 more to go. We're going to proof them in these little paper bowls. I've used different things. Glass bowls, porcelain bowls, things of that nature, using oil or whatever to keep it from sticking. I've tried quite a few different things over the last couple of years. I like the paper bowls best. There's 2 reasons for that. One is that it's really easy to get the dough out of them. I'm going to use a little bit of baking spray rather than olive oil. I find that olive oil makes the paper bowl kind of fall apart, but the baking spray does not. But what happens is that the baking spray puts a thin layer on there. The dough ball will not stick to it. And when it comes time to get your dough ball out, you can just kind of invert it and pop the whole thing inside out, and the dough ball falls right out, and it's really pretty and simple. So, all right, each of these are looking pretty good. They need a little bit more tightening. So I'm going to spray my bowls here. I'm going to give each one of these just a tiny bit more tightening up. At which point, we're going to let them proof for roughly an hour. Move that one nice and rounded up. Drop him in there. Drop him in there. These last two seem a little smaller and a little firmer. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to probably make 2 pizzas this evening, and then we're going to save a couple dough balls in the fridge for either tomorrow or the next day. They'll keep up to probably about 3 days. So, all right, and we'll drop him in there. These 2 we're going to save for later. These 2 we're going to cook today. But for now, my last step. A little bit of cold water on the dish towel, just to, again, help keep humidity in the loaves where it belongs, or in the dough balls, rather. They're not loaves yet. We'll set these together like this. I'm just going to cover it like so. And this is going to proof here on the counter for minimum of 30 minutes, up to probably about an hour. We'll check on them in about 30. Might be about 45, meet it in the middle there. At which point we're going to refrigerate all of them because they're a little bit easier to work with when they're cold. So the 2 that we're keeping for the next day will stay in the fridge at that point on. The one we're going to make immediately will come out after about a half an hour, and then we might make one later, but it'll stay in the fridge for a little while before that. So that is all for this video. No, it's not actually. This is a good time to turn your oven on because your oven's going to take at least 45 minutes to heat up, hot enough to cook a pizza. Temperature, as hot as it will go. My oven goes to 500. I will set it to 500. I don't think many home ovens go above 525 to 550. Set it as hot as it will go. This is a pizza stone recipe, so you'll want a baking stone. Put it on the second from the top shelf. You want about 6 to 8 inches from the top of the oven, and you want the pizza stone in there preheating the entire time. So I will end this video, I will turn on the oven, and I'll see you in about an hour. Okay, we're back and we're ready to make a pie. The only thing I didn't show you is that after those loaves proofed here underneath the blanket for an hour, we put them into Ziploc baggies in the refrigerator for right about half an hour. That makes the dough a little bit easier to work with. As I think I said earlier, a couple of those are going to live in there overnight, so we can make more pies tomorrow. All right, so we'll get started. We're going to make a sausage and onion pie with a little bit of crushed red pepper for a little bit of heat. First things first, we need to flour up our work area here, and I use a wooden pizza peel for this. I find it's a lot easier to build your pie right on the peel than it is to build it on the countertop and then try to get a pizza peel underneath it, right? So I'm gonna flour that up really good. We can be generous, okay? And we've got our dough ball. You can see it's quite a bit larger than it was when we first shaped it. And this is what I was talking about these paper cups. Just dump the ball out. Not a whole lot of stretching. Not a whole lot of headaches either. So that's good. All right. More flour on top of our ball. While we're talking about this pizza peel, this is the peel we're going to use to launch the pizza. There's another peel here. We use that to serve our finished pies on. And then I've got like a stainless steel pizza peel that we use to remove from the oven. So once we have our ball out, we just kind of pat our fingers around in there just to kind of start spreading it. We'll flip it over. We'll do the same on this side again. Another time. another time. Now, as this is going on, use as much flour as you need. If it starts to get sticky, it starts to stick to your pans, just get more flour, dust it up. It's not going to hurt anything. All right, once we get it opened up a bit, I like to set it on the back of my hands, basically, right? We're just going to gently pull apart. Gently pull apart. Once it gets a little bit bigger, gravity will kind of start doing some work for you too here as it starts to hang. I'm just stretching it. Now when we're doing this, we're trying to leave, you know, about an inch around the edge that we don't stretch too thin, because that's going to be our outer, well, crust, but it's really called the cornicione. So once we have it kind of stretched out wide, we're going to set it down on our peel, and we're probably looking at about a 10-inch, maybe a little bit larger right now. We're going to dust this just a little bit more, let it rest for just a minute, and then we're going to give it one more stretch, see if we can't make it just a little bit bigger, because bigger pizza equals more pizza, right? Okay, so we're going to give this one last stretch. It's really loosening up now. You can see it's kind of flopping around a little bit more. It's hard to overstretch these, and even if you do, once you set them down, they tend to kind of pull back in on each other. So you don't have to worry about that too much. But this pretty much fills my pizza peel. This peel, I think, is just under 12 inches wide, so we're going to call that good. The next thing we do is sauce, of course. So I've got our sauce from before. I've got like a serving spoon. This is a little bit bigger than a tablespoon. So we'll start with maybe about 2.5 scoops of the sauce there. Just going to spread that around. Go right out to the edges. You don't want to go necessarily right up on the edge, because again, we want that outer cornicione to kind of brown up on its own and rise up. But this looks pretty good to me. And we're going to call that good for now. Set this aside. Second step, we're going to cheese it. Now this is just a regular grocery store part skim mozzarella block of cheese that we shredded before we came on camera. You do want to shred your own cheese, by the way. The pre-shredded cheese that you can buy at the grocery stores, that's generally got like a kind of a powdery additive coating on it, and that's to keep it from clumping together in that bag that you buy it in. But as a result, it doesn't melt and doesn't have quite the same properties when it's cooked. So the only other thing about cheese, it's easy to over cheese a pizza, so less can definitely be more. Next, I've got some sausage. This is just an ground Italian sausage that I cooked a day ago. Stuck it in the freezer, so this is still fairly frozen. We'll just get some Italian sausage on there. Again, less is kind of more, especially on a Neapolitan type thin crust pizza. Now I've just got some onion, diced onion, white onion. You could use whatever kind of onion you like. You don't need to use an onion if you don't like. So put that on there. All right, then we've got a little bit of this like finishing cheese. This is a blend of Asiago, Romano, and Parmesan. So I'm just going to take a little bit of this, just kind of as a finish. I'm not going to go too crazy. We're not looking for a whole lot out of this cheese other than just a little perk of extra flavor, you know. So we're done with that. Finally, we're going to make this spicy, so we're going to nice coating of these crushed red peppers. And I always finish off with a tiny bit of oregano or Italian seasoning. This happens to be oregano. Okay, so now our first pie is ready to launch. I'm going to describe this. I don't have the ability to show you this right now. We'll get to that in a later video though. But to launch our pie, our pizza stone is in the oven. This is our stone. We're going to give this a couple shakes until it starts sliding a little bit. What we're going to do is we're just going to slide it in and we're going to slide back really quickly. And that's going to allow this just to slide off onto the stone. Then you might give it another shake or two to get it completely released from the peel, but you'll get the hang out of it once you've done it once or twice. It's pretty natural. Again, this is the only part where if you don't have enough flour on this peel, or if this sits here for too long, it'll stick to this wooden paddle, and it's really difficult then to get it into the oven. But anyway, let's launch this. I'll be right back. Okay, so the pizza's launched. It is 8:34. I'm going to set a timer here for about 8 minutes. And we're going to keep an eye on it because there's more for us to do still. All right, the pizza stone, I should start that. The pizza stone was at about 508 degrees. The ambient air in the oven was about, maybe right around there really, but maybe a tad bit higher, maybe 510 or so. We're going to let that go for about the first 3.5 minutes on the bake mode. Then we're going to turn the oven off, and we're going to turn the broiler on high. And then we're going to let that go for about another 3 to 4 minutes. And the reason we do that is because it mimics the heat from above that you'd get in an authentic pizza oven. We have a portable wood-fired oven we use, and when you look in the front of it, you can just see the flames arcing over where the pizza gets cooked. So our broiler is basically just going to recreate that, or emulate that type of thing. So we've got, it's been about 1.5 minutes, so we've got a little bit more time. I'll just keep tidying up here, and then we're going to turn it on to broil. And then we'll be right back. In fact, I've still got 2 minutes. You guys all know how to turn an oven on to broil. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this, and I'll be back in about 3 or 4 minutes with the finished pie. All right, back with a nearly completed pizza. I left it in the oven for 3.5 minutes. Then I turned the oven on, turned the broiler on high. It will have been in there for 4.5 minutes in about 45 seconds, it looks like. And I am fairly confident that we're going to be done right on time there. And we'll get it out of the oven here in just a moment. And we'll have a look. Another tool I didn't mention, infrared thermometer gun. Helps you measure how hot your pizza stone is. Okay, we're down to about 20 seconds here, so I'm going to go ahead and kill my timer. We're going to get this pizza out and have a look. All right. So we can all see that. Puffy cornicione there. Looks awfully good to me. That's it, guys. I normally let them sit for about a good 3-4 minutes before I cut into them so that the cheese and toppings don't all slide off when you try to eat a slice. I'm not going to do that on video. But when I post this video, we'll also have some pictures that you all will be able to see on whichever channel you're watching me on. So other than that, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned how to make some good pizza. And we'll be back perhaps tomorrow, maybe even later tonight with a all cheese pizza. So we'll talk soon. Thanks for watching.